This is Mac OS Ken.
A later early hiring spree, waiting and not waiting for a Mac, and sizing up Apple antitrust concerns. It is Tuesday, the 24th of May, 2022. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Notion, one workspace for your whole team. Learn more and get started for free at notion.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Early hiring spree, take 2. Early this month, we heard word that Foxconn was hiring a surprisingly large number of people. The hiring was happening at the company's iPhone City plant in Zhengzhou. While Foxconn would be expected to hire a huge number of people ahead of the iPhone 14 launch, this felt early for that. Still, some thought that's what the hiring was for, while others thought it was simply Apple/Foxconn trying to keep up with current demand. We barely had time to wonder about it. The very next day, Foxconn ended the big hiring push. It actually had to, thanks to a resurgence of COVID-19 cases in the city and orders of lockdowns to quell that surge. Early hiring spree, take 2. According to a piece from Apple Insider, Foxconn's hiring of staff at its biggest iPhone factory in China is taking place early in preparation for the iPhone 14, after Apple requested for the assembly partner to onboard more workforce members 2 months ahead of usual. Citing a report from UDN, the piece says the effort is to ensure there's sufficient manpower on hand to build iPhone 14 and to minimize the impact of local closures and supply chain disruptions from further lockdowns. Interestingly, UDN sources seem to think the early hiring means Apple is actually ready to start producing iPhone 14, or will be 2 months ahead of usual. According to the piece, the sources believe that under Apple's current concerns for production capacity, the company is aiming to stock up on iPhone 14 at least 2 months earlier for 2022, with more than 30 million units expected to be produced. So I guess we're just going to go ahead and start talking about iPhone 14 then. Macs are still hard to get from Apple, though you might get lucky shopping around. That is the latest word from 9to5Mac. In late April, we heard word that people who had custom ordered MacBook Pros in late February were seeing those orders pushed out to June. In May, 9to5Mac said some late February orders were pushing out to July. Now, the latest piece on the issue from the site says the stock 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro notebooks are shipping as late as the 28th of July. And direct from Apple, if you upgrade any component, like the M1 Pro, Max chip, RAM, or storage, the shipping time slips to as late as the 8th of August. It's hard to see how that could be if Apple is still pushing February orders to July, but what do I know? Here's what's really interesting. According to the report, availability is the worst directly from Apple. Various retailers like Amazon, Adorama, B&H Photo, and Best Buy have stock of a variety of MacBook Pro configurations available now. Same seems to go for other Mac models. Just because they're hard to get from Apple does not mean that they are hard to get elsewhere. According to the report, Apple appears to be giving some level of priority to keeping third-party retailers stocked, which, if you ask me, totally makes sense. People going to Apple to buy a computer are very likely to wait for a Mac. People going to Best Buy to buy a computer are very likely to leave that day with a computer. If there are no Macs there, guess what they're not leaving with? I'm curious who is waiting for what and for how long. Did you order something months ago that is still months away? Apple stuff or other stuff? I'm just kind of curious. Let me know. info@macosken.com. Quoting a piece from Apple Insider posted last Friday, a European Parliament committee has advanced an agreement between member states on the Digital Markets Act, which, if passed as it presently stands, will force Apple and others to open up otherwise restricted app stores, hardware features, and more. End of days stuff. Ragnarok. According to the piece, the rules could require Apple to open iPhone to third-party app stores, could force Apple to make iMessage interoperable with other messaging apps, could end self-preferencing of first-party apps in app stores, and could force Apple to open access to NFC communications technology in its devices. And I feel certain there is plenty more where that came from. Failure to comply would be expensive. According to Apple Insider, the European Commission can levy fines of up to 10% of a company's global revenue from the preceding financial year. Those fines can reach up to 20% in cases of repeated violations. The laws could be on the books and enacted by the middle of the third quarter, according to the report. Sounds serious, but what does money think? Over the weekend, Apple 3.0 had Evercore analyst Amit Daryanani doing a deep dive on Apple's antitrust risks, including those posed by the European Commission. In fact, that was one of 4 threat vectors eyed by Ad Rock. According to the analyst, the bill will target sideloading and third-party payments and could have a roughly 9% earnings per share impact if it forces Apple to lower its App Store fee. While Apple Insider says such rules could change as early as next quarter, Daryanani doesn't see them hitting until sometime next year. Other risks outlined by the analyst. The Apple v. Epic fight could lead to a less than favorable ruling, though he thinks that could take years to play out. Legislation in the U.S. Senate could pose risks, though Daryanani seems to think that changes from the European Commission will do what the Senate has threatened to do. And the U.S. Department of Justice could still bring an antitrust case against Apple, though the DOJ seems more interested in stopping giant mergers. While Apple says it would be open to those should the right ones come along, it's pretty much never done one, so that seems less risky. Summing up his note, Daryanani wrote, "The antitrust landscape is vast and constantly changing, which is why getting an expert perspective can be valuable. Our panel will include experts who work on both the policy and legal sides in both the U.S. and EU. Fundamentally, we think Apple remains a core name to own." He said they would hear from experts, and they did. Late in the day Monday, Daryanani posted notes from a webinar featuring Jennifer Rye, senior antitrust litigation analyst at Bloomberg, and Morten Scroger, senior director for technology competition policy at SIIA. Summing up some of Daryanani's top takeaways, the EC thing is a thing. However long it takes, Apple is likely to win the epic Fortnite fight. While the DOJ may bring an antitrust case against Apple, Daryanani's experts doubt it will succeed. While both Democrats and Republicans dislike big tech, the reasons for their dislike are so different that meaningful legislation out of the Senate looks doubtful. And should the Senate actually get its act together, Facebook and Google would probably feel the brunt, with Amazon and Apple seen as lower priority. Daryanani sums up this note saying, "Legal and regulatory risk are not going away for big tech, but Apple seems to be relatively better positioned than some of its peers. He's got an outperform rating on Apple shares. He has set Evercore's price target on the shares at a street high tying $210. More news in a moment, but first a word from Notion. One workspace for your whole team. You know what might be worse than the telephone game? The smartphone game. Oh sure, everything you type in is preserved, but is it in Slack or Teams? Is it in iMessage or email? Where the heck is it? For friends and family, that might be fine. For work, though, everybody needs to know where everything is. For you, that could be Notion. No, you don't have to learn a bunch of new stuff. Notion takes a lot of the tools you already use and puts them all in one place. preventing the kind of miscommunication and silos that can prevent good work. And here's another great thing. Notion has a worldwide network of millions of users creating templates, tutorials, and new inspiration. They share what they've learned and how they work so you can work even better. With powerful integrations and seamless navigation, you will have everything you need in one spot. When I think of the ways that could have made past work that I've done so much better. Learn more and get started for free at notion.com/macOSKen. That's notion.com/macOSKen to help you take the first step toward an organized, happier team today. NOTION. That's notion.com/macOSKen. 9to5Mac has word of a secret network adapter from Apple, though you can probably never have it, according to 9to5Mac. They don't tell you that part till the end, though. First, the gear. The site says Apple has filed this network adapter with the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC. The FCC handles radio stuff, which a network adapter would have to handle too. Citing documents shared by the FCC, the piece says Apple's mysterious network adapter has 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and NFC antennas, plus a USB-C port. The FCC filings also show that the accessory features 32 gigabytes of internal storage and 1.5 gigabytes of RAM. A second version of the same product has a Lightning port instead of USB-C and only 1 gigabyte of RAM. All of that, and it runs a version of iOS. Now, how much would you pay? Well, you can't and probably never will. 9to5Mac says Apple has multiple devices registered with the FCC that are intended for internal purposes. They're thinking this is one of those. Yeah, but who knows? Are you like me, constantly wishing for reminders of just how old you actually are? Apple Music to the rescue. iLounge says the streaming music service has launched the Essentials Anniversaries collection. The service has had Essentials playlists for a while. They're not greatest hits lists exactly. They're more curated lists from music nerds highlighting tunes you need to know if you want to grok the fullness of an artist or group. Essentials Anniversaries is kinda that, laid out in 5-year chunks. You know, so you can really feel the passage of time. I mean, who doesn't want to be reminded that the Eminem show came out 20 years ago? That Radiohead's OK Computer and the soundtrack to Buena Vista Social Club came out 25 years ago? Or that Avalon by Roxy Music was 40 years ago? As a matter of fact, I could go on. The list goes back 65 years. You know, just in case anybody was feeling okay about anything. Sorry, I may have some stuff to work out. Add another big name to Mrs. American Pie. Deadline says global superstar Ricky Martin will have a leading role in the upcoming Apple TV Plus series. According to a press release from Apple a few months back, the show follows Maxine Simmons' attempt to secure her seat at America's most exclusive table, Palm Beach High Society. As Maxine attempts to cross that impermeable line between the haves and have-nots, Mrs. American Pie asks the same questions that still baffle us today. Who gets a seat at the table? How do you get a seat at the table? And what will you sacrifice to get there? Even before Mr. Martin's arrival, the show had plenty of star power behind it. Kristen Wiig is set to play Maxine, with other names of note including Allison Janney and Laura Dern. Dern is also an executive producer on the project. No word on when it'll hit the Cupertino streamer. And finally today, the CEO of Apple has been heralded by the widow of the former CEO of Apple. That Apple CEO Tim Cook would be found on Time magazine's 100 most influential people list is hardly news. Honestly, might be bigger news if he wasn't there. Making his presence on the list particularly notable is the person who wrote the 2 paragraphs on Cook. Emerson Collective founder and widow of Steve Jobs, Laurene Powell Jobs. Writing of his business wisdom, as well as his philosophical wisdom, Jobs writes of Cook's mastery as Apple CEO, not only executing the logistics of such a business, but also taking responsibility for the company's effects on society. It is exactly what one would expect from such an inclusion. Laudatory and thought-provoking. All of that in a couple of short paragraphs. You can check them out for yourself on the site for Time Magazine. I'll have a link to the write-up in this story on macosken.com. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Notion, one workspace for your whole team. Learn more and get started for free at notion.com/macosken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.